So firstly, thank you for the invitation from National Gas. Thank you to the Chamber. Good to see Jake again. Spend a lot of time seeing Jake for reasons that escape me sometimes, but no, it is good to see him. And it's great to be back in, I'm only joking, Jake. Back in the northeast again, my favourite part of the country, and to particularly see so many thriving businesses in the Tees Valley. I had a chance to visit a couple of them this morning, and to see so many of them in the room today, because it really is such a vital area for the UK. It contributes £79 billion to the economy, thanks to its highly skilled health, social care sector, its advanced manufacturing, of course, the chemical industry. And as I said, I've seen some of that great work today. I visited a fantastically innovative company called Supercritical Solutions, based in Redcar, a quite amazing team who sell high-pressure electrolyzers that will be really important for clean, rapid and efficient production of hydrogen. And they've secured an investment of £3 million in funding through our net zero innovation portfolio, supporting their vital innovative project for decarbonising whiskey distilleries. And I'm sure a project dear to everyone's heart here. And it really is actually game-changing technology. And their success is a testament to the impactful collaboration across the clean tech sector, driving us ever close to our net zero goals. After that, it was then over the road for a discussion with Cummins, again, a company I've had the pleasure of visiting before. But a few months ago, that sentence could have meant something very different, bearing in mind that we're only, 15 miles away from Barnard Castle, who have, I'm told, some brilliant ophthalmic services, or so I've been told. And Cummins, as the company, of course, Darlington is called, work with hydrogen and in particular electrolyzers, has seen them expand their manufacturing footprint greatly. And up and down the length of the country, we can see many similar companies, innovative companies, diversifying their operations. So Cummins, for instance, obviously famous for making diesel engines, but they're now diversifying into electrolyzer production, into hydrogen production, hydrogen engines, natural gas engines, really encompassing the broad sweep of technology that will be required in the decarbonisation journey and the opportunities presented by net zero. So in the UK, since 2010, we have secured something like £200 billion worth of investment in low carbon technology. But we need another £375 billion on the way, huge sums of money. And to take one particular pertinent local example, carbon capture and storage, it could see up to 50,000 highly skilled British jobs right across our industrial heartlands in the north by 2030. And we have tremendous storage potential in the UK, something like 78 billion tonnes of potential storage in the continental shelf alone. The UK really does have the potential to become one of the greatest carbon storage bases, not just in Europe, actually, in the world. So far in the UK, we have over-delivered on every one of our targets to cut emissions, and we've actually decarbonised faster than any other major economy in the world. We've had the fastest reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of any other major economy. We've reduced emissions by something like 50% since 1990. And we've boosted our share of renewables from about 7% in 2010 to actually, the official figure is almost half, but when I looked at my National Grid app earlier this afternoon, because it's a particularly windy day, we're getting almost 60% of our electricity from renewables at the moment. We're fourth in the world for the attractiveness of our investment landscape for clean energy, and we've now slashed generation from coal by 95% since 2010, and we'll actually be phasing out coal generation completely by next year. And we will become the first major economy to be completely coal-free. Of course, we know we have an awful lot more to do, And the government is determined to build on that success with a pragmatic, proportionate net zero plans, which I think really importantly bring the public along with us. And that's why, as part of those plans, we will help to leverage something like £100 billion worth of private investment between now and 2030, and in the process of doing that, support about 500,000 jobs. Just yesterday, you may have seen in the autumn statement, the Chancellor announced £960 million Green Industries Growth Accelerator, which will help to support the expansion of homegrown clean energy supply chains, again, right across the UK, which I think gives even further evidence of the government's commitment to achieving net zero and the massive potential that it has to level up the country. So the Green Industries Growth Accelerator, or GIGA program, as it's known, includes carbon capture, use and storage. It includes electricity networks. It includes hydrogen, nuclear and offshore wind, all of the topics and subjects that we will need. And some of that I'll cover later in this speech. But it's all part of a £4.5 billion package of funding for manufacturing to support that essential private sector investment in 8 strategic sectors right across the UK. And the idea is that decisions like this will give businesses the long-term certainty and helping to ensure that British manufacturing can keep pace internationally and helping other sectors to emerge and become world-leading in the years to come. But on the back of that, it is important to remember that it's a transition. We can't switch our energy supplies overnight, and transitions will take time. Renewable energy is great. I'm a huge supporter of it, but it isn't yet still sufficient to meet our domestic needs. So as fast as we move towards net zero, we still need other dependable sources of energy for many years to come. Now, oil and gas in this country still meet around 3/4 of the UK's energy requirements. Data published by the Climate Change Committee shows that even in net zero in 2050, when the UK has achieved net zero, and any emissions from fossil fuels are abated using technologies such as CCUS, we will still be using oil and gas for around 1/4 of our energy needs. So we also know that oil and gas will remain essential to producing the materials of the modern world for many years to come, including cement, steel, plastics, chemicals and fertilizers. And it's for those reasons that the government recently announced the Offshore Petroleum Licensing Bill. And that bill will make the UK more energy independent. It will help to increase investor and industry confidence through holding regular oil and gas licensing. It will help to enhance the UK's energy security, and it will reduce our dependence on actually higher emission imports from overseas, including from some very unfriendly parts of the world. And thirdly, it will protect a domestic industry that currently supports more than 200,000 jobs, again, many of them in this region. And it is projected to contribute around 50 billion in tax revenue over the next 5 years. So now really is a time for pragmatism on climate policy. It's a time for proportionate measures that get us towards net zero. Which brings me on to the subject of hydrogen. Now, as we transition to net zero, nations are really waking up to the fantastic potential of hydrogen to decarbonise heavy industry, decarbonise transport, and it can really fill some critical gaps in the power system. And we really are determined to explore its full potential to provide the secure, reliable, clean energy that the country needs to thrive. So we published the UK Hydrogen Strategy in August 2021, and that outlines a comprehensive roadmap for the development of the wider hydrogen economy over the 2020s to deliver on our ambition of 10 gigawatts of hydrogen production by 2030, subject, as the Treasury would want me to say, to affordability and value for money. At least half of that will come from electrolytic hydrogen, drawing on the scale-up of UK offshore wind and other renewables and the new nuclear capacity that is to come. So this ambition will drive significant private sector investment delivered by a strong, investable proposition through the hydrogen production business model. And that will help to address the key barrier to deployment, which is, of course, the cost gap compared to existing fossil fuels. And hydrogen is becoming an increasingly important part of our plan for energy independence, offering a new, clean source of energy which we can produce domestically using some of the great innovative skills, experience, manufacturing and natural resources that we have in this country. So, for example, hydrogen could transform the North Sea energy industry. It could transform many of the industrial heartlands and could help to unlock over 12,000 jobs, up to £11 billion worth of private investment by 2030 here in the UK. And we will be having some significant announcements to make on that over the next few weeks. Very closely linked with our plans for hydrogen is carbon capture, usage and storage. The Climate Change Committee described CCUS as a necessity and not an option for the transition to net zero. And it will be essential to meeting the UK's 2050 net zero target, playing a vital role in levelling up the economy, supporting the low carbon economic transformation of many regions such as this one, and perhaps most importantly, of course, creating new, skilled, high-value jobs. And we estimate that the technology alone could add up to £5 billion to the UK economy by 2050. Also, of course, CCUS presents us with the opportunity to decarbonise many parts of heavy industry which really have no other alternative. I'm thinking of the steel industry, the cement industry, and some of the chemical industries which really do lack any other viable alternative to achieve deep decarbonisation. And again, we will help to create some world-leading low-carbon manufacturing clusters, including right here in Teesside. Which is why the Chancellor committed an unprecedented £20 billion worth of investment to CCUS in March, and why we have progressed at pace since then. We have now published the Track 1 project negotiation list, which includes 8 projects to progress to negotiations to form the first 2 CCUS cluster, one based in Hynett in the northwest and Wales, and of course the East Coast cluster based here in the northeast. But that is not the extent of our ambition. We've committed to expanding these clusters and support another 2 clusters by 2030, helping us to achieve a target of 20 to 30 million tonnes of CO2 captured and stored per year. And that is the equivalent, roughly, of taking about 4 to 6 million cars off the road. But to be successful in those net zero goals, the NSTA, the North Sea Transition Authority, have estimated that as many as 100 domestic CO2 stores will be required by then. And we recognise the importance of improving the visibility of the sector to investors, and we're committed to setting out a vision for the CCUS sector that will support our net zero ambitions and raised investor confidence. And again, that will be published before Christmas. So we've engaged with industry during development of that vision, and you will see the fruits of that labour shortly. But to realise our ambitions in CCUS, we are taking the steps to utilise our existing workforce right across the country. So, for example, in the North Sea transition deal, we've developed an integrated people and skills strategy to ensure that the highly skilled, transferable workforce is being tapped into throughout the energy transition. We've also established something called the Green Jobs Delivery Group as the central forum that industry, government and other key stakeholders can use to make sure that the UK has the workforce needed to deliver that clean industrial revolution. So the UK has over-delivered on every target, and we've cut emissions far faster than any other major economy. And we are determined to reach net zero in a proportionate and pragmatic way. Real change comes from incremental steps forward taken by companies in this region, such as Supercritical, such as Cummins, bringing together technology to market and help us to reach our net zero goal even quicker. So it will be achieved by a managed transition, one that creates and protects jobs, skills and growth, and most importantly, takes the public with us. So thank you very much indeed for listening. Been a great pleasure to be here, and I look forward to taking part in the question time session. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So, Lord Callanan, there'll be a chance for questions on the panel, but if anyone has got a question now, I know you'd be delighted to
Absolutely.
take those. So if we do maybe a couple, any questions for the Minister? Oh, I think they're holding back. Oh no, there it was.
Hello, Lord Callanan. We met up at Dordon quite a while back now to look at the mine water heating scheme back there, which is absolutely fantastic.
Brilliant scheme. I hope it's going well.
Yeah. Then comes the question, which makes it a bit more difficult, perhaps. I'd just like to ask you how you feel we're going to be able to decarbonise when we've got such difficult processes to actually get the money. So as a local authority in Durham, I'm the cabinet member for neighbourhoods up in Durham and climate change. We had 5 employees spend an entire day submitting applications for public sector decarbonisation only for the system to crash. And then everything had to be resubmitted again. And I just wondered if you've got any thoughts on how we make it more streamlined so that not only local authorities but the public sector more generally can get the funding through and target the work that we need to do at those things which bring down our carbon emissions the quickest.
Yeah, really good question. Firstly, my apologies for the PSDS system crashing. It's organised by a delivery company called Salix, and the problem with the PSDS funding is that it's a relatively limited amount and it's always massively oversubscribed. The system Salix were operating was a first-come, first-served model, which opened on a certain time. Of course, everybody tried to access the system to put their bids in. I'm changing that. The next round will be over a much wider window, and it will be a more competition-based model, so the best projects will be selected to succeed. So absolutely take the lesson on board for that. With regard to the energy efficiency grant schemes generally, we are starting to experiment with devolving it down to local authorities directly. So we're starting with the West Midlands and Greater Manchester mayoral areas. The problem with devolving it down is twofold. Firstly, of course, the department, my Secretary of State, still has the legal obligations to deliver, obviously, the legally binding carbon budgets and the fuel poverty reduction targets. So she has the obligation to deliver that, and it was regularly tested in the courts against it. So we try to use the funding to deliver against those objectives. So in principle, we're happy for the funding to be devolved as long as we can monitor that the delivery is still taking place, because you've got a number of local authorities across the country, such as Durham, who are brilliant at deploying the funding and some really good schemes, and I know you and your team have some good ones, but there are also some local authorities across the country who are not so good and have really poor delivery mechanisms, including some of the largest authorities in the country. So it's about making sure we get the maximum value for money for the available cash that we have. There's never enough to satisfy demand, and so very happy to look at a mixed model where some authorities can take things a bit further and have funding devolved when a competition model exists for some of the others. But